Hello, everybody. Welcome to Sunday Springboard with Melanie and Kimberlyn Coaching, where we help women recover from and flourish after stress and trauma. I'm so glad that you're joining me here today. We've been talking for weeks and weeks now about stress and trauma, and we remember that trauma is not necessarily one big major event, but it can be daily critical negative stress in your life. And we've talked about all kind of ways to reduce stress. Today we are going to be talking about the COR disciplines, which are a way to make ourselves strong so that we can react differently to stress. I'm going to share my screen with you, so give me just a moment. Okay, so our title is You Can't Teach an Old Dog New Tricks. Well, not. You've probably heard that before, and if you believe that, then you have a mindset that actually is going to create more stress for you. Let me ask you a question first. Suppose you had a terrible day. You spilled coffee on your shirt on the way to work, you got a parking ticket on your lunch break, your boss reprimanded you for publishing a document with several major errors. What would you be thinking? Would you think, oh my word, I'm such a dummy. This always happens to me. This is just the way my life is. I'm not smart. I'm not lucky. This is just it's just the way it always happens with me, right? Go figure. Or would you be thinking, yeah, this was not a good day, but maybe I should get a better travel mug for my coffee so it doesn't spill. Maybe I need to be more careful when I park, and maybe I needed to slow down a little on my work and double check my work. Which one of those would you be thinking about yourself? Okay, I've got some other questions here. If I told you that your intelligence, like an IQ score, is something about you that you cannot change, would you A, agree with me, or B, disagree? Okay. What if I told you that talents are something that you're born with? Would you agree or would you disagree? Your answer to these questions will help you decide which kind of mindset you have. Today we're talking about mindsets, mind over matter. Our mindset does matter. So there are different words that you may have heard people say, and I'm going to use all of them so that you can understand what they mean anywhere you hear them. So on one hand, we've got a growth mindset or a mastery mindset. To me, they're both about the same. Then on the other hand, we've got a fixed mindset or a performance mindset. They're not exactly the same, but I'm going to use them a bit interchangeably. I think a fixed mindset is one of the reasons that you can have a performance mindset, but not the only reason. So we're going to think about what kind of mindset do you have. So a growth mindset and a mastery mindset is the idea that we're always growing, that we don't have to be perfect, that anything that we do, we're going to do the best we can. But if one thing that we're doing fails or doesn't go right, we're not a failure. We just had some errors at the moment, and we look at it, we figure out what we can learn from it. We think about how to do it better next time. We have compassion on ourselves because we're human, and we just let it go. A fixed mindset is the idea that you got your intelligence at birth, you got your talents at birth, and pretty much what you got with from your genetics are what you're stuck with. So if you're a smart person, then you're a lucky person. If you're a dumb person, then you're just out of luck. If you're talented, good for you. If you're not talented, you just go flip burgers at Whataburger. Not that that's a bad job, right? I mean, who wouldn't mind eating Whataburgers all the time? Anyway, so we've got these different mindsets, and we're going to talk about these mindsets today. We're going to talk about different things about them and how to possibly change which mindsets are better for us as far as helping us have a more powerful life, helping us reduce the stress. So let's think about some things that you may believe in regards to your mindset. So the growth or the mastery mindset is generally more positive, moving forward. The fixed or the performance mindset is more stressful, and you get stuck a lot of times. You have these cause anxiety in your life because you're having to perform when you don't believe that you can. So you've heard about an IQ test, and over here, especially in the West, we generally see an IQ test as this determines how smart you are. This determines your intelligence. Did you know that that is not actually what it was meant to do? It was actually created in the early 1900s. The government over in France had just started making mandatory school the policy, and they wanted to find out which kids were going to struggle the most in school so that they could help them out, give them as much assistance early on so that they would do well in school and wouldn't get behind. So Alfred Binet and Theodore Simon, could be Simone if it's French, but they created this test, this IQ test, and the purpose was just to see who is going to need some help. We today pretty much take this as this is your intelligence, and it's kind of like you got this and it's stuck. But think about that realistically. How could a test taken on one day you're having a bad day or a good day, you got this experience or that experience, how could that one test determine your whole life, your whole intelligence? So this scale is called the Binet-Simon scale, and like I said, this is the basis for intelligence tests. But Binet, even though he created this test, he was not convinced that this kind of test could be used to measure, I'm going to read this, a single lifelong inborn level of intelligence. And I'm going to read the next paragraph to you too. Binet believed that intelligence was such a broad subject that giving a numerical value was insufficient. He believed that intelligence was influenced by a number of factors. He also believed that these changed over time and would only be comparable to children with similar backgrounds and experiences. I'm sure you can see a lot of things that this has an effect on when you've got children with this environment and that environment on this day or that day. It affects your rating on this test, and so it can't really determine and judge and predict your intelligence for your whole life. So there's this concept that we've had for a long time, or used to have, was that whatever you were as a child, whatever you learned as a child, you get to a certain point and your brain becomes pretty much fixed. This is a fixed mindset. You've gotten to this certain point, you've grown, you've learned all you can learn, and now you're kind of stuck where you are. But thankfully, scientists have found out over the past years that that is not true. Now, your brain is more plastic, able to be changed as a child, but you can keep your brain malleable and changeable, and you can keep growing and changing for your entire life. So the word neuroplasticity means your brain's capacity to continue growing and evolving in response to life experiences. So we've talked about this before. In your brain, you've got all these synapses, all these connections. And if you do the same thing for even a small bit of time, your brain causes a habit. Because remember, your brain wants to save energy, causes a habit, and you do things a certain way. But if something were to happen and your life experience was to change, you can actually change your brain. You can change those connections. You can make new connections. You can get rid of old connections. Now, the ones you've had the longest are hard to get rid of. Not saying they're easy, but they can be done. This is an amazing thing, right? We are not stuck where we are. When we feel like we're stuck where we are, this is part of the stress that we feel because we don't feel like we're up to the changes in the world. The world is changing constantly, and when we don't feel like we can change, that is stressful. So when we talk about actually changing our brain, the brain doesn't get larger, but it actually gets heavier. And they did some studies and all that showed that when like bus drivers, the part of their brain that has to do with spatial recognition, when they were driving the bus, that part of their brain became more activated, became heavier, had more connections. And like when they were tired, that area of their brain slowed back down and grew back small. Just like your muscles, when you exercise, they build up, and when you quit exercising so fast, way too fast, they go away. Our brain does the same thing. So we can keep our brain in good shape by constantly doing things to stimulate the brain, learning, continue to learn. These things will help you grow and change. This is an interesting thing. So this professor, he was a photography professor, and he broke his classroom into two different groups. It's one group of kids, he told them, your grade is going to be judged on the quantity of photographs that you turn in. It doesn't matter how good they are, doesn't matter if they're good about it, whatever, but you have to turn in 100 photographs each to get an A. 100 was an A, 90 was a B, 80 was a C, something like that. Then the other half of the room, he said, you are only going to turn in one photograph, and what you're going to work on is quality, not quantity. Only one is all you have to do, but it has to be perfect. It has to be the absolutely perfect, beautiful photograph for you to be able to get an A and pass this course. So when they got through with the time and they came to the end of the year, which group of people do you think produced the better photographs? So the ones on the left, the ones with the quantity, they were just taking pictures here and there, whatever. They were just doing it all the time. The ones on the right were concentrating and learning and researching. How do you take the best shot? How do you do the lighting? How do you do the background? Best camera, best angles, all these different things that they learned and researched to try to take the best photograph. Which ones do you think did the best? Yeah, the ones on the left. The ones that just did it. They just did it. They practiced. They just kept doing it, and they didn't worry about them being good. They just practiced. The ones on the right that were so worried about their performance being perfect and didn't actually get practice because they were just doing the motion. So there's motion and there's action. So motion is where you're doing the planning, the research, and you feel like you're doing something good because you feel like you're doing something. But if you stay in the motion of whatever it is you're doing, maybe you're thinking about getting a new job, maybe you're leaving an abusive relationship, maybe you're trying to go back to school or make some changes in your eating habits or exercise habits. You can go through all the motion, go get your exercise clothes and research the gyms in which exercises are good. But if you're doing the motion but you never move into action, then nothing ever changes. So thinking about our mindsets, if we have a growth mindset or a mastery mindset, we know that we're constantly growing, and we're like the kids on the left, just doing it. Just go ahead and do it. We're not afraid of failure. We're not afraid of messing up. If we do mess up, we actually expect to mess up. And when we mess up, then we're going to learn how to do it better. Whereas if we've got a fixed mindset and we move into having a performance mindset, in a performance mindset, if you don't do it perfectly, then you're a failure. So it produces a lot of anxiety, right? So if you're in this performance mindset, you're probably going to do a lot of motion, not a lot of action. And when you do get ready to do the action, you're going to have the anxiety, you're going to have the stress, and you're not going to have as much skill or talent as you would have had on the left. And so back to our questions at the beginning, if you did A's, the first answers on them, you will probably have a growth or mastery mindset. If you did B's, you probably have more of a fixed or performance mindset, but that's okay. They're not bad. They're just all along, all the things that I'm teaching you is There's no bad feelings, there's no bad this or that. It's just what is serving you well, and become aware of how you're seeing the world, aware of the thoughts that you're having. And then if those are not serving you well, how can you change those? Remember that our thoughts create our feelings, create our behaviors, create our consequences. So perfectionism is one of the things that really leads into the performance mindset. Like I said, if you're are in that mindset and you feel like it has to be perfect. Perfectionism, so okay, I have to tell you, I have fought perfectionism all my life, and I used to think it was a great thing. My dad was perfectionist, and I loved and worshiped my dad, and not that worship him, that's, but I'm really crazy about him, and I'm still miss him. But he was perfectionist, and I thought this was a good thing. I wanted to be a perfectionist, and I thought I could be perfect, and I made myself crazy, thinking that I could do this perfect or that perfect. And since I didn't do it perfect, I was always down on myself. And for me, that would always turn into eating to numb the pain of the failure. And so look at yourself and think about, is this a problem? Is perfectionism something that you're dealing with? One of the ways that I think that you may be surprised that I think many of us do the perfectionist thing and don't realize it. So have you ever said this? So I did pretty good on that. Well, I didn't do it perfectly, but I did pretty good. I was working on my food, and yeah, I did pretty good on my food. Well, I didn't do it perfectly, but right? Do you ever say that? Think about what that is saying. The assumption there is that I could have done this perfectly, but I didn't. If we accept that there is no perfection, then that goes a long way. Think about this. If you knew someone that was perfect, or is there someone maybe you think of them as perfect? Do you feel comfortable talking to them, sharing with them your hard times, your defects, the places where you struggle? No, you don't. You only feel comfortable telling those things to someone else who is also flawed, who is also imperfect, and doesn't mind sharing that. So here's a tip that a counselor gave me many, many years ago when I first started on this journey. She said, determine to what degree of perfection whatever it is you're doing needs. So like the scientists out at NASA, the rocket scientists, they need a high degree of perfection on their projects, right? Because it's life or death for those astronauts if they have something that's not perfect. A person when you're doing a law document, a legal document, that needs a pretty high degree of perfection, because if something is wrong in it, it can mess up the whole trial or whatever it is, agreement that you're doing. But in your daily life, when you're doing the program for your child's play, when you're cleaning your house, so many things, when I'm looking at my appearance, these do not need the same degree of perfection that those other things do. I was trying to make A+ on every single thing in my life, whereas some things are good enough being a B or maybe even a C, as far as that is for me to conceive. And you know, the thought of anything doing good deserves doing it right. Sometimes anything worth doing, I don't think I said that right, but anything worth doing sometimes is just worth doing. It may be not doing it perfectly. Well, it's not doing it perfectly because it can't be done perfectly. But one of the things we can also do is strive for excellence. So we can strive to do these things excellently, knowing they're never going to be perfect. That they're and so we don't have to feel like we're failing when we're not doing it perfectly. We're normal. We're joining the human race. Welcome to the human race. We are not perfect, and we don't have to be perfect. And when we don't try to be perfect or expect ourselves or others to be perfect, we definitely take away a lot of the stress that we feel when we're looking at through the lens of perfectionism and the performance mindset. Okay, so there were some misconceptions that some people may have about the growth mindset or the fixed. And nobody is 100% one or the other. We all have some mixed up in there, and we change. Sometimes things happen. So like maybe you've got a job and you feel very growth and mastery mindset, you're doing it, and then you maybe get a promotion, and then you feel the pressure to perform and be more perfect. And so you become more of the fixed and the performance mindset. So the way we think about this can change, but we just want to be aware of it. And when we're coming into it, we find ourselves in the mindset that produces stress, we want to talk to ourselves and talk to others and do whatever it takes to get ourselves moved more into the mastery mindset. And then also being positive or open-minded doesn't necessarily mean you have a growth mindset. A growth mindset means you're okay with failing sometimes, with always growing is the concept. And then there's another idea is like, okay, so if it's okay to fail, does that mean I'm never working on an outcome? I don't ever have a goal that I'm searching for, that I'm trying to do? And that is not what we mean. If you keep on doing efforts and their goal never happened, then you're wasting your time, right? We want outcomes, but we're okay with on an individual basis that that any individual failure is not a complete failure. And in the growth and the mastery mindset, our effort is valued and rewarded more than the positive outcome, even though the positive outcome is enjoyed and celebrated. And so the growth or mastery mindset refers to the desire to keep getting better, keep developing into the best you can be. It doesn't mean you just sit back and go, okay, I'm doing fine, I'm doing great, I'm growing, whoopie doopie. No, you're still going to work hard, but you're going to not have the stress of having to feel like you're 100% perfect every single minute of every day. And then with the growth and mindset, we're doing this to become more competent and more highly skilled. Well, we'll talk about it in a minute, but in the performance, when you're doing it to be seen, you're doing it so that it will look right. In the growth and mastery mindset, we're doing it to become confident and skilled. We don't believe that our talent is only given to us. If you have talent given to you, but you don't ever do anything with it, it's not going to grow. And if you don't have but a little bit of talent, but you work and you practice, then you can become whatever it is you want to be in that area. And then, so in the growth, we're looking at what will help us perform better in the long run, and we're focused internally. How am I growing? How is this affecting me? How can I learn and grow? We're motivated because of the feelings of pleasure or satisfaction we get from accomplishing something. You know how you feel when you set a task for yourself, a project, and you finish it, and you're proud of that. We're not so concerned with the outcome of any particular performance. So you've got all this stuff that you're doing, because this little one didn't go well, that's okay. In the whole scheme of things, we can still get to where we want to go because we're learning from whatever it was we messed up. Now, the fixed or the performance mindset is more of an ego orientation, where a lot of times we're doing it to win, to beat others. We're doing this in competition. We're comparing ourselves to others. We're wanting to look better than others. We're not necessarily caring so much about actually developing the skills and the talents, but that we present that we're having those skills and talents. Our self-worth, our values are tied up in how well we perform. We judge the outcomes as good or bad. Like I said before, if it's not perfect, it's a failure. And the performance mindset is extrinsically motivated. I mean, it's looking to the outside. This refers to our tendency to perform for external rewards. It could be for money, it could be psychological, like for praise, or like I said, it could be physical or psychological rewards, but you're doing it for something outside of yourself rather than the inward satisfaction of having done a job well. So remember, if you don't remember, go to my website, KimberlyCoaching.com, All my videos are on there, and we have done a lot of videos on stress and trauma and on change. We have been talking about several weeks now about how to reduce stress. Remember, we talked about first is how to regulate and calm down our bodies in the moment. Then we talked about how to know when and to eliminate stressful situations. And not all situations, not all stress is bad, but which ones are, and how do we get rid of those or change those? And then last week we talked about decreasing our reaction to stress. And we talked about that in the whole list of things I gave you last week. One of those was the COR disciplines. So what does this mean? So wait a minute, let me back up a minute. The COR disciplines, like I said, today is the introductory. In order to do these COR disciplines, these are things like acceptance, awareness, conscious choice. These are ways of living, ways of looking at life that will help us reduce our stress. But in order to do them, we have to have this growth and mastery mindset, or we're going to get discouraged because they're not easy to do. If we think that we have to do them automatically, we have to do them all the time, then we're going to get discouraged, and it's actually going to cause us to have more stress. So before we even get into those, which we will start those actually next week, I wanted to give you some background and have a foundation to be able to do this well. So let's talk about what does this actually mean, since everything that we're talking about is stress. If you have a growth mindset, you have less stress. If you have a mastery mindset, you have less stress. If you have a fixed mindset, you have more stress. And if you go on to have a performance mindset, you have more stress. So I'm not sure if I have another. Oh, that's not what I want. Okay, so that is the end of the talk today. If you need some help figuring out this stuff, figuring out, do I have a growth mindset? Do I have a performance mindset? How can I change? Some of the things that we're talking about next week about awareness will actually help you with that. But if you want a little more one-on-one help, obviously I would love to help you with that. You can consider hiring me as your coach. I'm also actually offering a free coaching session. Anyone who wants to, in the show notes, there's a link. You can just schedule a time with me. We'll have a free coaching session, and we can kind of help you decide where you want to go, how you want to take this, and what would be best for you to move forward and have a life at least relatively free of stress. Also, if you are not watching this on my group, I would like to invite you to my new private women's Facebook group called Resilience and Transformation. You can find a link to that, I believe, on my business page, which you might be watching this on my business page, or you can find a link to that on my website, KarolynCoaching.com. If you can't find it anywhere, message me and I'll get you the link. Meanwhile, hope this helped a little bit and hope you have a great week. Bye-bye.